Welcome back to the cryptoworld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, do not be fooled because Bitcoin could be repeating history, potentially setting up another trap, while BlackRock just bought over $100 million worth of Bitcoin in just the last one day. And on top of that, Ethereum is still bouncing from critical short-term support as the price is playing out a new pattern in the short term. So I'll be talking about all of that and so much more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, we need to talk about the Bitcoin ETF news today because over the last one day, BlackRock has bought an additional approximately $100 million worth of Bitcoin for their spot Bitcoin ETF. Because as of right now, BlackRock is now holding approximately 45,600 Bitcoin worth over 1.83 billion US dollars for their spot Bitcoin ETF. Because as you can see here on BlackRock's own website, once again, they're holding around 45,668 Bitcoin worth over 1.83 billion US dollars. And just yesterday, they were holding around $1.7 billion worth of Bitcoin. And so obviously BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF is continuing to grow in size as they're continuing to accumulate more and more Bitcoin to back their ETF. But a substantial amount of this Bitcoin is most likely coming from Grayscale because just yesterday, Grayscale dumped approximately 19,000 Bitcoin, which was worth around 770 million US dollars, basically sent out of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. And out of that amount, around 15,000 approximately Bitcoin got sent over to Coinbase, basically to dump on the market. And if you've been watching any of my recent videos here on the channel, you would know that I'm expecting Grayscale to continue to dump around 10 to 20,000 Bitcoin every single weekday on the crypto market. Because as of right now, Grayscale is still holding over 528,000 Bitcoin worth over 21 billion US dollars. And basically the fee for holding your Bitcoin in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, in the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF, is 1.5%. Basically, you're paying 1.5% on any amount that's sitting in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Whereas by comparison, if you're looking at the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, you're paying 0.25% per year on any money sitting in the BlackRock ETF. And so obviously that is a massive difference in fees between 0.25% and 1.5% when you're talking about billions of dollars. And so obviously it makes sense that a lot of this money that's sitting in Grayscale being charged much higher fees is going to move over to cheaper ETFs, like for example, the BlackRock Spot Bitcoin ETF. But because the Grayscale ETF is a cash create ETF, they cannot pay out these holdings in Bitcoin. They have to pay out in US dollars, which means if people are wanting to move their money out of Grayscale, they're having to dump that Bitcoin on the market that's backing the ETF in order to pay out in US dollars. And so that's basically what's been happening pretty much every single weekday since the spot Bitcoin ETFs actually got approved, because there's simply a lot of money looking to exit Grayscale, which is causing short-term selling pressure. But as I've mentioned recently on the channel, if Grayscale continues to dump this amount of Bitcoin approximately every single weekday, then in roughly around a month from now, they will basically be completely out of their Bitcoin holdings. And so basically, I expect that within a month from now, the selling pressure from Grayscale will likely stop, but at least over the next few days, possibly over the next few weeks, once again, we could potentially see some more selling pressure due to Grayscale. Because at the moment, Grayscale is simply selling more Bitcoin every single weekday than other players like BlackRock are actually buying. But once Grayscale is eventually out of their Bitcoin, once that selling pressure finally stops, which will happen eventually when they run out of Bitcoin, obviously at that stage when we no longer have that extra selling pressure and instead we just have potentially a lot of buying pressure from other Bitcoin ETFs like the BlackRock ETF, obviously that could result in a larger bullish recovery in the price of Bitcoin, perhaps in a few weeks from now or in a month from now. And remember, in only a couple months from now, we have the Bitcoin halving, which is also a very bullish event. And so just keep in mind, even though I'm slightly bearish in the short term due to Grayscale dumping on the market, that is only short-term price action. But anyway, getting into the Bitcoin charts, this is on the daily Bitcoin chart, and over the last couple of days, we've seen pretty much a perfect bounce from this area of support, which is still sitting in between around 37.9k to around 38.4k. And so once again, that is still the level of support to pay attention to on the daily time frame. But if we break back below around 37.9k, then in that case, our next area of support is sitting in between around 35.3k to 35.8k, and below that, we also have this area of support sitting in between around 33.4k to around 33.9k. And obviously, at the moment, this bearish divergence is still currently playing out in the price of Bitcoin, which means we should not be expecting a significant amount of bullish momentum, at least in the short term. And instead, we're most likely going to see either some choppy sideways price action or potentially a bit more of a pullback in the price of Bitcoin as the most common outcomes from a bearish divergence. And if we're taking a quick look at the DXY, also known as the US dollar index, over the last one day, we've seen a slight dip in the DXY, nothing too crazy. And so obviously that slight dip in the DXY has actually coincided with that slight bounce in the price of Bitcoin over the last couple of days. But overall, the DXY has been moving to the upside over the last few weeks now, which once again is a warning signal for Bitcoin and crypto, because when the DXY is bullish, that is usually bearish for Bitcoin and crypto. And as of right now, also on the daily Bitcoin charts, the price of Bitcoin is still retesting this previous line of support, now acting as a new resistance, which is sitting at approximately 40,500. And at least as of right now, at the time of recording this video, we've seen a slight rejection from around 40,500, but we haven't fully confirmed that rejection as of right now because we have not even confirmed a red daily candle close after seeing that rejection. But basically, if we do end up seeing more confirmation confirming that rejection and that break to the downside, with some more red daily candle closes confirming, then obviously that would be another bearish confirmation signal, further confirming the break to the downside and setting up that short-term bearish trend, which I've been talking about recently on the channel here. And once again, as I've been talking about for a while now on the channel, of course, we're seeing a downtrend here in the daily Bitcoin RSI, which at the very least is a sign of weakness for the price of Bitcoin in that previous bullish trend. But oftentimes these reversals in the RSI into a new bearish trend can actually be a leading indicator for the price of Bitcoin before we start flipping more bearish, which obviously has happened more recently. But in case you're new to all of this, it's important to understand the difference between the shorter term trends and the much longer term trends. Obviously here on the daily time frame, we have these more short term bullish and bearish trends that usually last a matter of weeks or potentially a matter of months. But these short term bullish and bearish trends here on the daily time frame have been all occurring within a much larger bullish trend that can be more visible on the weekly time frame, for example, and that's been the case since the beginning of 2023. And so ever since the beginning of 2023, you can even go back to my videos all the way back then on the channel, I've not flipped once on the much larger trend. For example, on the 3-day chart or the weekly chart, I've not flipped once. I've remained bullish that entire time, and I'm still very bullish on the much larger trend here. And that larger trend is effectively a bullish market. It's a bull market. And so once again, I'm still bullish on the much larger trend. But remember, during the larger bullish trend, we can see short-term bearish trends here and there, which are basically large pullbacks during the larger bullish trend. And that's basically what we're seeing right now. And so obviously on smaller time frames, it's very normal to flip between bullish and bearish more often because the trends change between bullish and bearish more often when you're looking at smaller time frames. But once again, that much larger trend has remained bullish the entire time, as I've been saying since the beginning of 2023. But anyway, zooming into the shorter term, looking at the 4-hour Bitcoin chart, and right now we're still seeing that rejection from this area of previous support now acting as new resistance, and that area is sitting in between around 40,500 to 41k. And so as I said in my last video here on the channel, I would only start to flip more bullish again in the short term if we start to see a confirmed breakout back above around 41,000. But at least as of right now, once again, we're experiencing a bit of a short-term rejection from that previous area of support, which is a short-term bearish signal. And so at least for now, it is quite clear that the trend, at least on the 4-hour time frame, is bearish. Obviously, we're forming lower highs and lower lows, which is a short-term bearish trend. But during this short-term bearish trend, obviously we've seen some small bounces here and there, which have been caused by these small bullish divergence patterns here on the 2-hour time frame. And so as I said in my last video, Bitcoin history is basically repeating because we're playing out another short-term bullish divergence, resulting in a slight bullish relief. But so far, this is actually the 3rd time this has happened during this short-term bearish trend. So this is nothing new for the price of Bitcoin. And remember, a divergence between the price and the RSI is not necessarily a reversal signal. These don't always result in a trend reversal. And so quite often these bullish divergences, for example, usually result in either choppy sideways price action or a slight bullish relief just in the short term before we could potentially continue the trend later on. And if you're looking at the outcome of these last two bullish divergences during this same short-term bearish trend, we can see that the RSI made it up towards around 58 to 59 here on the 2-hour time frame. And as of right now, the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI has made it up towards around 54 to 55 approximately. So basically, we're getting very close to this level of resistance here in the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI. And so if history simply continues to repeat as we've seen already over the last few days, then we could potentially see a rejection from that resistance area in the RSI like what we saw these last two times. And obviously, if that's the case, if we see a rejection after resetting that RSI to the upside, then that can give us more room to the downside later on to continue that short-term bearish trend, which as of right now has not broken. And if you want to trade these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, you can make money if the price is going down with short positions or up with long positions. And personally, I take those trades over on Bybit. And so I'll make sure to leave a link to Bybit in the description down below and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link to make a Bybit account and deposit on that account, you can get up to a $30,000 deposit bonus, but only if you use that link down below this video. But for whatever reason, if you cannot access Bybit or if you cannot KYC on Bybit, there is also Bitflex, which is another crypto exchange similar to Bybit, but you don't need KYC for Bitflex. And so I'll also make sure to leave a link to Bitflex in the description down below and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link and deposit $100 worth of crypto or more and to make one trade over on Bitflex, then you can get 10 USDT completely for free. And so if you're trading crypto anyway, or if you're preparing to take the next trade, you might as well get set up or ready to go on one of those exchanges using those links down below this video if you want to get those extra bonuses. But anyway, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, and if we're looking at the last 1 week worth of price action, we can actually see some new liquidity levels sitting to the upside, which are sitting mainly at around 42,000. First of all, we do have a small amount of liquidity at around 40.5k, so we could potentially see a slight move up towards that level right there. And then obviously above 40,500, we do have resistance in between 40,500 to 41k, as I mentioned earlier in the video. But if we actually see a breakout above 41k, breaking out above that short-term resistance, then in that case, a short-term bullish price target would potentially be 42k, considering we have a lot of liquidity at around 42k. But remember, that is only if we see a confirmed breakout above short-term resistance, which as of right now has not happened. Technically, we're still within that short-term bearish trend, as I just explained. But if we're zooming out to a much larger time frame, looking at the last 3 months worth of price history here in the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we can see a massive level of liquidity to the downside, which is sitting at around 34,000. And so basically, that would be a larger bearish price target if this short-term bearish trend continues. Once again, we do have a lot of liquidity at around 34,000, and before that we also have some more liquidity at around 36.7k. And as the saying goes, the trend is your friend until the end, and right now the short-term trend at least is bearish. But anyway, getting into the Ethereum part of this video, this is on the daily time frame, and right now the bearish divergence is still playing out as expected. So once again, I would not be expecting any significant bullish momentum, at least in the short term, and instead it's most likely going to play out in the form of either choppy sideways price action or a pullback, which is usually what happens after these bearish divergences. And on top of that, obviously, we also have that bearish momentum showing up here in the daily Ethereum MACD, as I've been warning about basically every day since the price was all the way back up here at around 2,500. Once again, we have a lot of bearish momentum right now in the market. But we still have this major area of support sitting in between around 2.1k to 2150. And so obviously, if this pullback continues, we could potentially bounce from that area of support. And just recently, we have seen some slight bounces from this area of support on the 4-hour time frame, which is sitting in between around 2170 to around 2.2k. And so at least for now, that's still acting as a bit of short-term support. And obviously this sideways consolidation and that slight bounce has been helping to reset the RSI back out of oversold territories, which can actually give us more room to the downside later on. Because once again, as I've been saying, the short-term trend is technically bearish, as I've been saying since all the way back up here. But obviously more recently, we have picked up more bearish momentum. And just in the imminent short term, looking at the 2-hour time frame, obviously over the last 1 day or so, we have seen this very small bullish divergence play out on the 2-hour time frame, which obviously has been resulting in mostly choppy sideways price action, which once again is one of the most common outcomes from a bullish divergence. But considering this is only on the 2-hour time frame, I do not expect this to play out much longer, and so potentially sometime soon over the next 1 day or so, or even in the coming hours, this could potentially invalidate with another move to the downside. Because remember, on the smaller time frames, these patterns are less significant compared to larger time frames, and obviously the trend at the moment in the short term is still currently bearish. And something similar can be said about the price of Solana on the 4-hour time frame. Even though we've seen a bit of a short-term bounce over the last couple of days, obviously we're still technically forming lower highs and lower lows, which is the price trending in the bearish direction on the 4-hour time frame. And obviously with this short-term bounce in the price of Solana, this is helping to reset the RSI back to the upside, which can actually give us some more room to the downside. Because obviously right now the price is no longer oversold, meaning we have some more room to the downside. And as for support and resistance, we still have this area of support sitting in between around $83.50 to $85.50, and more support down towards around $77 to $78. And as for short-term resistance, I'd be expecting resistance at around $91 to $92, and above that we have more resistance sitting closer towards around $99. But if you want to know how you can profit from crypto, no matter if the price is bullish, bearish, or simply chopping around sideways, you can profit in either of those scenarios by watching these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how to make money using long positions or short positions if the price is bullish or bearish, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.